Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, that motion carries, and so that request to pursue the concept of year-round school at Lemon Wire is approved. Thank you. Next is a discussion on the curriculum proposals and budget reductions and/or additions for 2014-2015 school year. And so we have looked at this before as part of sort of the discussion of looking towards a referendum, but also the need to cut some costs, and the administration got together and developed a plan for proposed cuts and gave that to us to look at. But also we wanted to take the opportunity to have the board discuss those proposals and weigh in on anything that they think should be modified or changed or otherwise just discussed, prioritized. So, I don't know if Mr. Gorder or Mrs. Zardi has any particular framework for this discussion, but sort of open it up for discussion on the recommended cuts that we received earlier.
The only comment that I would make is that the information that we've shared with you has been shared with our staff in the Toma School District. And, we have talked with individuals whose positions are being eliminated. People potentially could be laid off if a referendum doesn't pass. And I guess what's interesting is we're not getting a lot of pushback from our staff. I think they recognize that, there are tough decisions that need to be made, but I haven't heard, and I don't know about our other administrators, but people are not here tonight saying this is all wrong. You did this wrong. I think there's a sense that we were very systematic. We looked at all of our programs. We took a lot of time. We, as I mentioned before, challenged each other's thinking about how do we do things better. And so we believe we've put together a plan that is viable.
And to reiterate, these are, although we are certainly looking forward and discussing a referendum, these were reductions that were premised primarily on the fact of declining enrollment. Less students, some departments we felt like could be responsibly reduced.
That's correct. That is part of it, the declining enrollment. As student enrollment has decreased, we have to recognize that there are going to be some teaching positions that need to be cut. But also because of the Department of Defense grant and changing philosophies in educating students, we've made some shifts as well in terms of positions and how we're providing programming. So again, we're trying to put the district in a good position for improvement and moving forward, while at the same time making reductions.
Well, I have just a comment. I'm kind of looking at this like, I know we have to make the cuts. And what I'm hoping is that there only has to be one set of cuts. So I'm looking at it more of that the referendum will pass, hoping so. So my only concern is to make the two recommended cuts a little more equal as far as curriculum and athletics. I respect the time and effort that everyone put into this. I know it has to be done, but that was my only concern, was that it was a little bit more even in as how it was cut.
Was there anything in particular that you would look at? I mean, that you would specify, or is it more just a philosophical?
It's more philosophical. It's more, I just think it would be more fair if there were more cuts in the athletics on the top tier, hoping then that that's all the farther we would have to go, hoping that a referendum passed.
Yeah, I can certainly appreciate that philosophical view of it. I guess my only concern is, one, with most of those, if we're looking at the second tier, most of those amounts don't make up much ground. And two, I guess if they're not needed for the first, if they're not needed under the premise of the first round of reductions, I hate to eliminate those just for the sake of a philosophical view. I mean, even though I appreciate that view, and if it was, I guess if the situation was different and we were actually eliminating things, I would definitely be much more persuaded. But most of what I see in that first tier are not so much eliminations in my mind as resizing. I mean, is that unfair?
Yeah, no, that's not unfair, and that's true. I
But if we're
guess
still
it's-
making tough decisions, let's make all the tough decisions, though. Let's not just pick on the education side of it.
Yeah, I guess I just don't accept the premise that we're picking on the education side. Again, you know, if I believe the administration's presentation, these were resizing programs that should be resized based on either enrollment or changes in curriculum. So, yeah, I would take issue with the characterization that we're picking on the academics. I'm going to be the last person, for personal reasons, to pick on the academics side. And so, I guess I see the choices in the second tier being almost, at this point, ceremonial or token sacrifices if they haven't been found to have been needed right now.
True, and I'm not suggesting that we're sacrificing academics for the sake of extracurriculars. It's not what I was trying to get at, but as we've discussed, like the middle school baseball program, granted it's not a big dollar amount looking at the grand scheme of thing, but it's been discussed that the middle school baseball program has 2 schools we compete against, so why even have it? When the Park and Rec department in this town has a very successful baseball program, as they do a successful basketball program or, you know, a wrestling program, you know, so it's not like the students wouldn't have those abilities to get that from somewhere else. But if we're going to talk about saving money, which is what we're essentially at the heart of it talking about, then we should be able to discuss this.
Okay.
You know, in regard to the middle school program, the baseball program, it should be noted, though, that there is not a charge for that. So the city Parks and Rec program does cost money, and even is it the Arrows Braves? There's a fee.
There's a fee for that.
Fee to participate in that. And because it's weekends, I mean, there will be some kids that won't participate in baseball if the program is not offered at the middle school. And, you know, if that's, I guess, if the voters in our community say don't offer it, I feel better about them making that choice rather than recommending that that program should be cut. Because again, that first tier, we're really not eliminating any programs. Programs will exist, they will look different, different people may be involved in ensuring that the work is carried out, but the programs, the opportunities still exist. So we can take, when you look at those bottom items though, the high school, the assistant high school dance position, you know, we can eliminate that without eliminating the program. That could be moved up. We could move up the assistant junior, or the junior varsity boys tennis position. We'll still have a tennis program, but we can eliminate that coaching position. And typically, that is something that we do from year to year. Anyhow, Tom Curran examines what the numbers are, and if there aren't enough for all of the coaching positions, we don't, you know, we'll back off on hiring someone in those positions, just as if there all of a sudden there's a lot of numbers, we'll go ahead and approve hiring an additional person to help with that supervision. I did speak with Mr. Curran today also, and you know, he did present some other cuts that could be considered. One of the things that he talked about was instead of taking a bus to the wrestling invitationals, using a bus to transport our wrestling athletes, we could take 3 vans. The coaches would have to drive. But that would save almost $2,000. You can save $1,000 doing the same thing with the girls' gymnastics, going by van, coaches driving instead of a bus driver. I'm not sure that that's in the best interest of, again, the program, because I think our coaches worrying about driving when they need to be thinking about the competition and coaching the kids, we're adding more of a burden onto them. But you know, those are things he included eliminating. We provide $50 for coaches to go to clinics every year. If that were eliminated, that would be another $1,000. We held on uniform purchases.
And I'm not in favor of holding on uniform purchases, because in the end that becomes a headache for the rest of us, because somebody's not getting what they should be getting in the appropriate time. And I think if you're going to cut and you want to make cuts, you make the cuts, but
There's a rotation basis
exactly.
on the uniforms, just like there is on vehicles. On buses. You know, it's less dollars, but it's still the same principle. Gary, you could probably say it better than me, because you're on the same committee I am that has gone into that. But it's a rotation process, and they don't get uniforms for every team every year. It's rotation.
I think that's a good process, because if you cut it out, then somewhere at the end result, you're going to have it purchased.
Mm-hmm.
So the rotation part of it is good. I mean, if you
And driving buses is fine,
Yeah.
you know, and vans, and that's all good and well until something happens.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you have coaches that are sitting at a wrestling meet for 8 to 12 hours or more, and then they're responsible for driving the kids home. You know, when it makes sense, you know, I'm fine with that. But to send 3 vehicles, you know, when you're paying the driver, question that just.
I feel the first round of cuts here is pretty much based on declining enrollments, and they need to be done because we're going to have smaller class sizes, and I think that the administration looked at that carefully. I wouldn't be opposed to taking the assistant dance instructor and the JV tennis position and moving those up, but I don't think we should be swapping back and forth. if there's a couple from the bottom that can be moved up, so then that there is a more general feel of, you know, you've got academics and sports, but I don't know that I would agree with doing any of the ones that you just suggested, Mrs. Zardi. I think we have to be careful about how we do that. And, you know, if we eliminate the baseball at the middle school, usually those programs, once they're gone, it's harder to get them back.
And moving those two positions up does not bring anything from up down. It doesn't, the dollars don't even...
There's not enough,
Yeah.
you can't be swapping
You
out,
can't.
because those dollars at the top, it would take probably quite a few of those on the bottom to slide up there, if you're looking at just the academic, or the sports part of it.
And I'd be careful to characterize those as eliminations based on what Mrs. Zardi said, because if the numbers come back up in any one of those, if that's what I heard right before I say that, Mrs. Zardi, that if the numbers come up in boys tennis, you may have to add another coach regardless, if that's what I...
Right, with those two positions. But I believe Mr. Kern made that recommendation based on some longer-term
Probably.
patterns that he's seen with a decreased participation in those sports.
And that's, I don't want to be that to be construed with I'm for or against anything that you're talking about. I'm just bringing that up so that we make sure we all know what we're talking about. That comes under here.
One other thing too, and I know I've said this before, but you know, we're saying that the Tier 1 cuts are tied specifically to declining enrollment. And I have a hard time believing that cutting the tag coordinators is specifically tied to that. I think cutting the tag coordinator is specifically tied to the salary that position commands. I mean, I know Cindy said that last time we talked about this, that in other districts, they don't have tag coordinators, but since it's a mandate by the state that we have someone assigned to that position, it's usually the curriculum director or whatnot, correct?
Building principal.
So
yeah.
cutting that position is purely financial. There's nothing student enrollment numbers-wise tied to it. I still have a fear that cutting the tag coordinator position is basically eliminating the program from our district. And when you eliminate a program like that, it's hard to get that back as well. I know we talked about that students have ice time and we're going to more of an individualized learning curriculum, but the students in that program can fall through the cracks just as easily as the students in the remedial programs that we have to have mandated by state law. Those students in the remedial program will always get their individualized time. The gifted and talented students are not, because it's not required by law, but they can still fall through the cracks just as easily and get bored, or if they're not challenged, if they're not engaged, and I have a hard time believing that ice time or individualized learning is going to help with that. So if someone could present something to me, and I'm not saying tonight because obviously we're going to be discussing this again, but if someone could present to me what that program would look like on the elementary level, the middle school and the high school levels, they have their own programs that the tag coordinator is not really directly involved in, I believe. I don't understand the inner workings of those programs on that level, but the elementary level is where I'm concerned about it.
I share some of that concern, Brian. Although the position itself, you're right, was not connected to declining enrollment, it was tied to a change in philosophy, and I can accept that change in philosophy. I'm not convinced, as similar to you, that it will translate easily, and that they'll get the same thing through ice time. I am a little bit concerned about enrichment and how that will factor in through the day. I think that's more just because I don't understand how it works. And so I would probably have some more questions about it.
I mean, case in point, the math competition for the 5th graders. Best they've ever done in that competition from our school district. So that program, in my opinion, has value. I know it has cost, but everything has cost to it, either financially or some other way. So
We have met, the elementary principals did meet to talk about how the TAG program could be carried out at the elementary level. And there was agreement that our Director of Curriculum and Instruction would attend the Mississippi Valley Gifted and Talented Coordinator Network meetings. Each of the elementary principals agreed to take one of the elementary events. So the math competition was talked about, that there would be someone responsible for that. Another principal taking the Heritage Fair, a third taking the Modern Woodman. I mean, everything, was kind of divided up and laid out, and then every principal being responsible for the Battle of the Books enrichment activity in their building. And we talked about, the idea of utilizing parent volunteers, retired teachers, individuals who maybe want to be more involved. I think the difficulty with one person in that position covering 7 elementary schools, the individual who's done that job for many years, is a wonderful person and does the very best he can. But you do have to question if 30 minutes a week at, with a gifted and talented student, with the coordinator, really meets that child's needs. And so how do we, I think our goal is going to be, we have to maintain what we have, but can we also even potentially make it better through some rearrangement of those responsibilities and getting more people involved.
Well, and that's a concern of mine too, because I have had, all my kids have been in the TAG program in elementary school, and Rocky does a fantastic job. And I think that there's been ways that the program could have been utilized better, and that's not a fault of Rocky's, because I think there's been certain areas where he's been handcuffed, where he couldn't do better for whatever reason. That's not a topic of discussion for tonight, but we can talk about it later if you want. But my concern is that getting rid of that, is just that the program is going to suffer based on the elimination of the position, and that's only because no one's really presented to me what the program is going to look like, and I don't understand what it's going to look like after the elimination of that position. So.
Sorry, do you mind if I say something?
No. What?
And only because I was part of that conversation that we had, and I completely understand your concern.
Do you want to come up?
Sure.
This is cool.
I completely understand your concern with the position being eliminated. However, as a building principal, I'm more aware now of what needs to be done for those students, or what I could potentially be providing them, than I ever have been. Only because with somebody coordinating TAG, if you will, it was kind of left for Rocky to be able to find those activities, to be able to deliver those services, where now that's completely different. Similar to Battle of the Books. I was, well, what exactly is that? What do I need to do? Had I known everything that went into that prior and was responsible for that, I would have had way more students involved, way more students having those opportunities to participate. So I think that bringing the awareness and having your at a building level will provide more opportunities than it ever has, only because, like Mrs. already said, 30 minutes, that he's available to come in and work with those students isn't enough for all of those kids. And so when you're spread out for 7 elementaries, that's difficult to do, but where we're focusing now on those students within your building, you're able to provide that attention every day. So I don't have a clear plan for you of what that's going to look like, but I know that it's exciting, at least for me, to be able to have an opportunity to, okay, what can we do to challenge those kids? Instead of just letting someone else decide what that curriculum is going to look like. So I would be excited for it. They're going to have more opportunities for and there's things that we can find that, like you said, his hands were tied maybe for time reasons, that he didn't have the time to invest every day for those students, where the possibility could lend itself where those are available, that we could have enrichment groups or whatever it is that those students were able to excel in. So
I think we're working much harder at, developing systems that allow students to move at their rate of development. At one time there was only a select group of kids that could test out to potentially take a higher level of math. And again, with more assessments that are being given, consistent assessments around the district, buildings can look at, here's the criteria, which of your kids are eligible. Now, building principals, we have to work out the schedule on how we're offering advanced math in that area for those kids, or whatever the particular activity may be. Principals and counselors will be much more involved in the development of those differentiated education plans for kids who are really needing very individualized plans and probably acceleration. Not that there won't be some bumps in the road, but I do think the potential exists for us to make some improvements as well.
And those opportunities are still there. Like she mentioned, the Heritage Fair, I think I have the Heritage Fair. All of those are still going to be available, and most of those, the classroom teachers were responsible for participating and putting together anyways. So like the Heritage Fair, or not the Science Fair, but yeah, the Science Fair, or the Invention Fair. The classroom teachers provided that information, gave students ideas, and the coordinator coordinated judges, and participated in the judging, but beyond that, and yes, whereas we would have that much different now. Either the building principal would have to take them, or maybe the classroom whose students got to move on, that classroom teacher got to attend with them. So they're still having those opportunities, and it's not going to look much different because they were already having those within the classroom right now.
And I understand that, and my concern wasn't with like the Heritage Fair or any of the other stuff, because I figured that stuff would carry on anyway because the students really enjoy it, so do the parents. My concern is with the individualized, learning, or not the individualized learning, but the individual time with those students that are in, because you talk about the opportunity for acceleration through the academic portion of it, and that's fine, that's great that it's still there, but that's not all what TAG is. And you know that, Cindy. I mean, you were the coordinator before, but like I think of my son, who academically, he off the charts. Socially, not so much. He's very immature for his age socially, but he can test off the charts academically, so acceleration really isn't the answer for him, and I just want to know what the programs are that would be in place to not only help him along, but to protect him as well.
Well, you're the perfect person to have on here, so you can help direct us in which direction we need, because there's a lot of kiddos like your son. So I think that we are open to suggestions, because it'll be new waters for us to go into also. But I think that there are a lot of opportunities through PBIS where we're having those social groups for kiddos that struggle like that, and we're having a lot of opportunities that we didn't have before in reaching students at different levels. I think this will just be another opportunity for it.
Thank you. So, Brian, I share your concerns. I'm still open to the argument that it may even get better if it's taken on at the building level, as opposed to one individual trying to cover everyone. But you've got some very personal experience with it, so I certainly respect that perspective.
I would hope that there would be a larger group of students at each school that would receive more of the enrichment end of it. I mean, in the past, it's been limited to, a handful that he works with. I would think that there would be other students that maybe are borderline, or if there's a way to make opportunities available for a few more students.
I think it's important to recognize that our gifted kids are really no different than the other end of the spectrum, our special needs students. So there's a wide variety of giftedness. You have, kids who can manage just fine in the classroom with some enrichment opportunities that the teacher provides. There are kids that need additional pull-out types of groups, and then there's kids that, again, are at the kind of what we say the tip of the pyramid, who really need very individualized acceleration, very specific programming options. So, there is a wide range of needs that you're working on meeting, even within that gifted and talented population, and trying to do that well has always been a challenge. But I do think having, I think Mrs. Pope brought up a good point, having the principals actively involved and knowing who those students are. And, I think of any population of kids, that this is an area where our community can step forward as well. And when you look at making some very unique opportunities, finding mentors for some of those highly gifted kids in areas that they have a passion or a real desire to learn more about, can be very helpful for them. And those might be things that we need to be looking at doing more of.
Okay.
But I did say last month, I believe, when we met, if we find that we've created bigger problems with some of the cuts than what we anticipated, I am not ashamed to come back and say, this is not working. We need to rethink this and see what we can do. These are not, things that, in an ideal world, we would be looking at changing.
Okay.
What was said though, Cindy, is you took this reductions to the staff, and for the most part, the staff was accepting your ideas. So that should say a lot for presenting it to them and seeing an eyeball what this is all about and moving on, just like you said. My feeling is that the reductions have been made, and I think it's fair. And certainly you and Greg and the staff put a great deal of thought into it. I'm accepting that thought.
So this was on for discussion tonight. My understanding, next month, you would be looking for formal approval. And essentially, it needs to be cuts in the amount, in this amount, the $460,000, because that's tied to the referendum amounts that we have also approved.
So then it wouldn't be legal to do any kind of switching or bringing any of the athletics up to the first tier at all. You would have to move money down to the second tier. It would have to be an even swap. Is that what you're saying?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
No, it's just since the way that the numbers played out, since we were looking at a $300 and some thousand deficit, we cut this 460, or proposed to cut that. We were going to add 125 as outlined below, and that gave us the approximately $300,000 that matched up with the amount that we approved for the referendum. So it's not that amounts could not be switched. It's more getting back to philosophy.
Well,
which
philosophy
is
or
appropriate.
not, but I'm a mom, I'm a citizen, public citizen. If I noticed this between the two tiers, if it jumped out at me, that was the first thing that jumped out at me, was curriculum on top, athletics on the bottom. I noticed it was an issue for me. So that's why I brought it up for discussion.
And when you first look at it, it does jump out until you get back to that explanation that I think makes that look a little misleading, in that those are, it's only that top tier that that really make sense in terms of resizing for our changing enrollment and our changing philosophy. The ones in the second tier don't really address the issues that we're addressing up above.
Right.
So it does jump out, but it's for a good reason that, I don't know, a good reason. That top level of cuts are, again, based on resizing and changes in philosophy. It's not, I think if, again, getting back to the explanations, in no way can or should that be interpreted to say that we are cutting academics at the expense of athletics, which is, I think, what you're saying when you look at it. That's how it looks.
Well, let us, having heard your concerns, let us take some time to think about that, see what potential changes we might be able to come up with and bring those back.
I am very opposite of what you're saying as far as, we have talked here before in the past about how extracurriculars, and that's not just athletics, but extracurriculars, increase grade level, increase students wanting to stay in school versus dropping out or having
Days they don't come to school, absenteeism,
truancy. It has such a big impact on that. And I'm not like you, and we're not like John, or all of us are different, and our interests are different. So the more extracurriculars we can have to hook the kids into being interested, the better it is. Somebody who wants to go out for cheer may not want to go out for chess club, or they might. That might be two of the things they're involved in, and their grade level bumps up higher. They're just so important. And there's teaching that goes on in there too, as well as in the classrooms, working together as teams, establishing goals. There's just a whole gamut of things there that are part of the teaching part that you need in life to work with other people in jobs, besides the academics. And I'm not hitting one over the other. I'm just saying we have to look at that part of it too. And it's just important. It all is important. That's what makes it so difficult. And I'd rather go with philosophy and with the enrollment, which is why we're here doing the impetus for this.
Would it be inappropriate just for us to take it back and review it as an administrative team and then come back? Do you have a board retreat scheduled for February that this could possibly talk about again, and then maybe consider if you're ready in the February board meeting to look at action, so it gives you guys time. Whether it's, for me, whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 5, it makes no difference. I think it's important that there's some mutual consensus on what we're doing with this, and give everybody the time to either, one, work through it, bring back the information that you need to feel good with it, or send us back to the drawing board to continue working on it until we come back with that. I would like that opportunity.
And the other thing about extracurriculars I just want to say is the school district provides opportunity for all socioeconomic levels to participate, usually, without, if I want to go to something in the community, as a parent, I'm going to have to pay for that, for my kid to go. And in school, it's more of an equal opportunity regardless of whether you have money or not. And in our school district, that is so, so important because we have a large socioeconomic group that needs that kind of opportunities. They don't have it otherwise.
And I don't think Jan's saying that extracurriculars aren't important. I don't think anybody is.
I know that, but I'm just pointing out everything else because everybody else has been talking about, nobody's mentioned those things. And
True, but to play devil's advocate, so forgive me, Pam, but there are people that in the community that think we are a school district first, so our first priority should be education, everything else is secondary. So, I mean, I'm not saying that I agree with that. I'm just saying that, yeah.
Just for the record, I think you have two people sitting right here that believe the same thing, that we're a school, our priority is education, and I just want to make sure.
No, I didn't mean it to sound like that.
I understand that, but I just want to make sure that that's our first thought.
I'm just saying public perception could be that, extracurriculars are secondary, so they should be cut first. There are people that believe that, so.
I think it would be helpful to meet in February because, maybe we swap, maybe there's a position that's worth the same cost for the tag coordinator as one below, we swap them out.
And you don't have to swap, folks, I mean, keep in mind, I don't know that saving money is saving money. I think that's been pointed out and discussed, and if I added these three positions up, and I'm not making an argument for or against this, because I'd really like a chance to go back and look at it with Cindy as the administrative team, if we can do that. But it totals about $20,000, so it will be difficult to swap. So, let us just go back and work before we start looking at that angle, because it could be difficult. But,
And I wasn't talking.
We got a whole process to go through.
And I wasn't talking about the sports part of it. I was talking about the ones 1 through 6, those options.
Yeah, because you're going to have to do something about that.
It's still laying off, eliminating a position for a staff member.
Point.
All right, well, we had the academy scheduled, and you had requested ideas, and this certainly would be appropriate for that. So we'll put it on for the academy, and then again later in the month for the regular meeting for final decision. Does that work for everyone? But I welcome the discussion. I'm glad. I've been disappointed if there had not been some input on this.
This isn't easy, and we have to work through it, and